How are you doing? This is Martin from Gardens for Life. Let's just test it to see if it's all working. Just bear with me for 1 second and we'll take a look. It appears to be working. I'll just wait and see if somebody could leave a comment here real quick, just to see if the sound is okay, if it's loud enough. And we'll just hang on for a minute just until people arrive. Well, I wonder, is it all working okay? Yeah, we got sound. Very good. Hopefully it's loud enough. If not, let me know. If I need to speak up a little or if I need to move a little closer to the microphone, let me know. We'll just hang in there for a minute just to see, just to give people a chance to join in. As usual, we'll do our news segment at the very beginning of the live stream. And what we'll do now is I'll show you just a few pictures from the last week here of what has happened at Birdland Cottage and at Gardens for Life with all of the gardens that we're setting up. And of course, we've been repotting a lot of plants actually this week in particular. Give me a second here. So what I'll do is I'll just show you. I have a whole folder prepared here. So the news is that our greenhouse, this is actually our smaller greenhouse, which we've had for about 1.5 years now. As you can see, it is certainly secondhand, but it does the job. And we've been growing a lot of plants in it last year and this year. And we're just in the process of clearing it out and repotting all of the plants that we've grown. There's a lot of different plants here. It has some red hot pokers. We got a special variety of red hot pokers actually, one from France with extra long flowers. And here you can see there are some oregano plants, some hollyhocks, valerian, lots of bits and pieces, some actually Mexican sunflowers, some Portuguese kale, and a few more flowers in the background, and some ladybird poppies here in the middle. So here's Bianca at her desk at her garden in our nursery, and we're repotting plants. Here's some a soup that we made actually with some Aztec broccoli in it that we got from our friends Charles and Shannon. Thanks very much, from Boulogne Arc in Loughrea. They have a market garden there. I'd highly recommend checking them out if you live near Loughrea in County Galway. So here you can see we've been hard at it. We've been repotting quite a few plants now in the last week, and there's actually a lot more than that at this point. And I finally figured out what's actually eating the one Mashua plant that I planted in the greenhouse. I couldn't figure it out. There was no sign of anything, and there was also nothing else being eaten, only that one plant. And lo and behold, they were so camouflaged I couldn't even see them. Some caterpillars. So that's the mystery. Maybe the plant will recover. We'll see. I put those far away. We don't actually kill caterpillars or slugs. We just pick them up and just throw them far away at the other side of the garden, or somewhere far away from our production areas anyway. And here are some fig trees that are doing really well. We've got a few different varieties now since actually last winter. We've been growing some this year. A few different ones. Persian Black, another one, Black Mission from America, and the Desert King and the Brown Turkey. So hopefully we'll be able to get more wood and grow some more trees as well, or in the coming years. You can see our tomatoes are doing very well. We've had a lot of advice from all of you guys, which was brilliant. After the video that I made about the tomatoes, about a couple of weeks ago, I believe, and they've done very well. I've actually taken most of the leaves off the bottom half just to stress the plant so that it actually sets fruit, because it's about time to, because it's getting colder already. And yeah, hopefully we'll get some tomatoes, as you can see. Looks promising anyway. Hopefully they'll still ripen. So here's some Madeira vine. The leaves can be used as a spinach, and there's actually a tuber underground as well. Here's some Apios tubers or ground nut. It looks very promising. Hopefully we'll have plenty of them and we'll be able to offer some as well. We're actually going to put those up, just a few of them though, on our web shop for the pre-sale, which we'll get to after a while now. So actually all of you guys that are watching here now are going to be the first that are going to get access to our pre-sale on our website for the ancient edible tubers. That means the ochas and the mashuas and the Jerusalem artichokes and the yacons as well. And there'll be a few more bits and pieces going up as well as we go. These will usually only be available from late November. And we're going to just put them up as a pre-sale now because there was a lot of demand for them in the past. So we'll show you those in a minute. Yeah, we got some new pots that have arrived and those are going out. There's a bunch of 2-liter pots. And here's Schnapper the cat sunbathing the one sunny day we had this week. Yeah, so if you guys have any questions throughout this broadcast, or I should call it a live stream, just leave them in the comments and make sure that you don't type it below the video on YouTube. Make sure you type it in the actual chat window on the right of the video. If you're watching from Facebook, I think it'll just come up automatically here. And yeah, please feel free to share the broadcast or the live stream with your gardening friends and give us a thumbs up if you don't mind, because that helps to distribute it a little bit more and helps other people finding it as well. And have a look here now. All right. So I want to give you guys, so today's topic, I want to just, before we get into the main topic anyway, I want to give you guys a bit of context and a bit of a history of why we're growing our own food and what has brought us here. Well, we're going to give you a proper introduction to how we got here in the first place as a full episode someday. Even covering growing food in a no-dig garden is a very broad topic, and we have to be moving along quite quickly. And a half an hour is not a lot of time to discuss even growing vegetables on its own, let alone other things like fruits and berries and mushrooms even, and edible flowers and all the rest, and herbs and vegetables and all the rest. So what I'll do is I'll just go through these real quick. So a long time ago, we were, well, I was actually still actually digging. I had an allotment, a plot at the allotment here in Athlone in County Westmeath in the Midlands of Ireland. And as you can see, I was very conventional and I didn't know any better, of course, at the time. This would have been about 10 or 11 years ago now. I was doing gardening up to 20 years ago and probably using very similar methods anyway. And we only found out about no-dig about 6 or 7 years ago, actually. You can see here we were just taking off the grass and then digging it over, and the soil wasn't very good at the allotment anyway. So we made beds and yeah, standard kind of allotment gardening, as you can see, growing some vegetables. Not particularly proud of these pictures, but I do want people to see them because there is a progression, and we're always been there is a bit of an evolution even, because we were, and I believe most people that are doing no-dig gardening nowadays probably have been starting off somewhere, at least in a more conventional sense, using methods that are more common. And you can see here we were covering the cabbages and the brassicas, like the broccolis, with netting, which was kind of labor intensive and kind of pointless because, you know, it's just to cover them for the butterflies so they don't lay eggs on them, and then the caterpillars don't hatch and eat all of your leaves off your brassicas. And we don't do that anymore. We just grow kale instead, and we just take the good leaves and we just take the leaf with the caterpillars off and bring it far away from our production area, as I said to you earlier. You can see here it is quite productive, but you know, it was an awful amount of work and we got a lot of vegetables out of it in the end. But after all, it's not worth it, really. I mean, it's so much easier to just do no dig, or even even using methods that require less maintenance, I should say, setting it up in a permanent way so you don't be digging the ground. And especially, like Charles Dowding says, you should not disturb the ground and the soil, because that there is actually a web of soil life, including the mycelia from the mushrooms and the soil life itself, and then there's all the worm channels. So you shouldn't be digging. You're better off not digging, actually. And we had lots of harvests. And here's the courgette. There's always one courgette that gets away. That one certainly got away for long enough, and it ended up too big. A few more bits and pieces there. And that's us after buying the house 3.5 years ago. And we were very happy because we just turned up basically just to view the house, and we saw the monkey puzzle trees, and we said, you know, that'll do. Lovely monkey puzzle trees. There's a house there somewhere behind them, but we don't mind. We don't need to see it. We were joking around, you know, and we were moving all of our plants. As you can see, we were moving everything we could as far as we can. We didn't have a van at the time and all the rest, and we were moving all of these plants as well, and even probably the same amount again in another area, about 10 car trailers worth of plants. And we started off with a field like this, just a blank field. We have a garden and a house with a site. So we have basically, we'd been starting with a blank canvas like that in our garden, which you know as probably from where the wall garden is with the famine wall, and where the actual wood chip island is as well, and the big greenhouse, the new greenhouse, that's actually in this field now. So you can see here, there's the famine wall now. A lot of work has been done since anyway, and you can see we were making the actual wood chip island here. That was just in the middle of making it. There's some couple of piles of wood chips and some compost here. That was one load of compost, and we later extended it here. And you can see now it has turned into this. And as you can see, it is quite abundant, and there's a lot of fruit bushes here and a lot of perennial vegetables as well, including chives and oregano, and even dahlia can be actually eaten too, the tubers of. But the horseradish as well, thanks to Valentina, my stepmother. And a lot of Portuguese kale in the background, and some fruit trees as well. Here is the actual wall garden, as we call it. It's only one wall, and it's luckily south facing, so we don't call it walled garden because there's only one wall. Lovely paths, and that's at the start of the season there now in May this year. We've been using that, and we're going to extend it as well. So as you can see, our methods of growing food have come a long way. And this is corn actually that was planted. And that's after about a month or so. There's our son. He picked some radish. There was lots of radishes. And that's behind our house. That's basically, it was all full of briars. And it was almost inaccessible. We've had to reclaim it back from nature just to do our own thing. And you can see here, that's where actually the top garden is, if you're looking at projects on our website. And there was the hugel culture bed as well, which I'll show you in a minute. And this is what we turned it into. So you have to imagine, if I go back, this is that corner here where the pizza garden is now. That's what it's turned into now. With the help of a neighbor putting out briars using a tractor, and with some chicken tractoring as well, by just putting the chickens there with an electric fence for about a year actually. And Yeah, and then again for 6 weeks just before installing this garden here. And we did our lasagna style beds here now, a full garden. If you're interested to see how it was done, if some of you haven't seen it yet, we have some videos on that on our YouTube channel. You can take a look on how we made this garden. We call it pizza garden because it's kind of like a pizza shape, and the beds are like in the form of slices. So it's a very efficient design actually, and it's 12 slices, 25 different vegetables. But you can see it's also surrounded by perennial gardens with lots of mallows with edible flowers and leaves, and medicinal plants, and of course there's plum trees. There's an apple tree, 2 pear trees, some mashua climbing the box on the north side as well. Lots of bits and pieces, some blueberries here, and this is our front garden. As you can see, it's mostly just been lawn, and you can see it's already suffering because, of course, once you take away the grass all the time, you can cut the grass and collect it. It's going to get depleted. The actual nutrition is going to get depleted, and it's going to go hungry, and then the moss takes over. And we were basically turned this space, instead of having to mow it all and put time and energy into it and money for petrol, we turn it into this. And this is actually only 1 year later after planting the trees. So we just planted the trees. There's a few fruit trees, maybe 10 fruit trees in total. And then we put our lasagna beds in all around. So let me go back. Can you believe it? Even we're actually astounded by that, by the change it made. And it's so productive. We have loads of plants here that are producing things like fruits and herbs and cuttings and vegetables. Not so many annual vegetables anymore, but in the first year when we had this garden set up, we had some space between the perennials to grow some vegetables like oca or red Russian kale, or a few other bits and pieces. Now it's mostly the perennials that have taken over, like chives, garlic chives, sage, oregano. This is actually a huge 3-year-old fennel plant as well. So we get a seed crop from that every fall, every September, the end of September, I believe it is. And the leaves as well, which can be used for making a tea as well. We have feverfew in the foreground, and some marshmallow, and lots of bits and pieces for the insects as well, and nice flowers to look at. And here's the real reason why we are doing this, because we moved. Well, I've always lived in the countryside, but we bought a house in the countryside with some land in order to grow our own food. And this meal is almost completely from our own gardens, and it tastes so much better than anything you can buy in a shop. Not just because of the satisfactory nature of actually seeing things grow, and just knowing that it comes from your own garden, and knowing that it wasn't sprayed with poison and all the rest. For the record, we do not spray anything on our plants ever, not even natural remedies either, for the likes of aphids or whatever. We don't care. We just let it grow. Our plants are growing so quickly that they outgrow any pests, and we have a biodiverse ecosystem. That's we're always aiming to improve and make more complex in order to reduce pest pressure by attracting beneficial insects like predatory insects like wasps and hoverflies and ladybugs as well. Even earwigs are very beneficial as well. I don't like them in the house though. So here's another meal that we made. There's some kale and some kohlrabi and a courgette. And we also have eggs from our chickens. And we made some delicious kale soup, Portuguese kale soup. That's our perennial kale that we're growing a lot of. And we have a recipe for that on the website too. So that's that folder, I believe. Let me see. Oh yeah, and we got some compost previous to that. Okay. So let me just check the chat here real quick. All right. Let me see now what kind of questions you guys have. Again, for those of you who have just joined, thanks for joining, first of all. I'm Martin, as you can see here. So what you can ask questions anytime, and I will try to answer them as soon as I get out of my full screen mode, which I'm showing you basically. Let me see here now. Thanks, Siobhan. It's always great to hear that we're making a difference in the world and that our information is being observed by people and also used to their advantage. We like to share all of our successes, but also our failures with all of you guys, our audience, just to help you guys along to hopefully help you not to repeat the same mistakes. So we'll see now what amendments, if any, do we add to our Nordic gardens. Actually, just pure basically just pure mushroom compost at the very start, a lot of it. I would suggest 25 centimeters or 10 inches of it. And then you can also add some volcanic rock dust, which is really good, and it helps to remineralize the soil, actually in this case the compost, and it'll help the plants to grow healthy for years to come. Now that is usually not water soluble, so it's the soil life itself that actually makes it available to the plants, including the mycelia. So it'd be good to plant, if with a healthy soil, you have soil organisms that break down the nutrients, like minerals, for example, and nitrogen and all the rest of it, into a plant available form. So we also add some seaweed dust in places. This is something new that we just found out about this year, and we're going to start using it more often. In some of our perennial gardens, we usually add a full layer of wood chips, maybe about 4 inches thick or 10 centimeters on top, and which needs to be replenished by about an inch worth of wood chips every year thereafter. But we've places in the garden that we didn't even need to look after for 2 years. Let me see here. It doesn't really matter with no dig. It doesn't matter about the seasons so much. We set up the gardens whenever we have a chance, whenever the next opportunity arises and we have time to do it. And we usually just try to gather the compost 6 months in advance from now on. We've been using very fresh compost in the past, and it's not great. It does need to sit in a pile for a while. I would suggest buying the materials like the compost in advance, and the wood chips actually closer to the time of you setting it up. Now let me have a look here now. Oh, very good. A forest garden. Our front garden is actually turning into a forest garden by design, but only understory type trees. So they're actually, fruit trees is the tallest type trees there. And then there's a hedge for a windbreaker or shelter belt. We have, usually we plant a couple of currant bushes, a black currant and a red currant, in the same hole as the actual fruit tree. Usually we also plant some wild fruit trees in between. I don't know if you've heard of this before, but it's mostly for pollination. Anything with the word golden in the title or in the variety name of a tree, a fruit tree in particular, has longer flowering periods, and it'll actually cover different varieties of trees. So you can also plant wild fruit trees, which are great forage for the birds and for the wildlife. But most importantly, the wild fruit trees are really good pollinators, and also they actually prevent pests. They're more hardy. And Sepp Holzer likes to plant, I believe it's 1 wild fruit tree for every 3 or 4 cultivated fruit trees, in among them anyway. So let me have a look here now. Yeah, thank you for being here too. So if you guys have any questions, let us know. Yeah, you can do a chop and drop as well. That's one way to do it. I see we're already running short on time, actually. I'm going to just continue here with the material. Okay. So again, as I said to you guys, that we'll be giving you more of a detailed history on our past anyway, and how we got here. So vegetables, we grew a lot of vegetables in our pizza garden this year. And this is actually the hugel culture bed, which we planted about 3 years ago now, actually. That's one of the first things we did here. It's only small. And I'll just show you here. That's how it ended up after. And that's the harvest of pumpkins we got out of it. This is how we set it up with some cardboard, bit of wood. Didn't have much more. I would have actually put in a lot more wood if I had it. And some compost and wood chips. And you got just brush away the wood chips to plant into it. That's the squash plants. And some oca and some mint into it too. We have a few bits and pieces planted in the back here. A few raspberry canes and a few currants and gooseberries. We already had a harvest of runner beans that time. And we have a spiralizer, which means you can make courgette, which are really good actually. You should try them. And with likes of pumpkins and any kind of fruiting crops, with if you have plant them in a fully wood chipped mulched garden, you can you don't have to look after them to make sure they don't touch off the soil. Like strawberries, for example, would want to have straw underneath them, basically something to keep them from hitting off the ground so they don't go moldy. But with a wood chip garden, you don't need to do that. It's so easy. And we're going to expand our gardens as well, as we have time and space and resources available. And the pumpkins did phenomenally well in the garden last year. We have a pumpkin video actually, if you guys are interested. This is what the pizza garden looked like 2 months prior to the other picture. And this was after planting, about a week or two after planting. And this is what it looks like after 2.5 months. Yeah, we're astounded too. I mean, sometimes we just set up these projects and just forget about plant them, set it and forget it, and just leave it and start working on other projects. And we come back every once in a while, and we're just astonished by the rate of growth. Here's some ullucus actually on the right hand side there. Here's some chocolate mint in the front, celery, and some mizuna, some pak choi, and some more ullucus, and yakon. More ullucus, onions. We have some black Tuscany or Nero kale, beetroots, mixed colors actually. Some oca on the left and some cauliflowers on the right. And we had lots of courgettes lately, which we shared with our neighbors and friends. We also had some, yeah, this is basically just a bowl of vegetables from the garden to make a soup. And here is some potatoes that we harvested, that we made a video about actually. 10, I think it was 10 or 12 buckets of container grown potatoes, and they did okay. There they are. Here's some corn. Didn't do that well this year, but you know what? It was actually not a great year for it. Same as beans, actually. We also do some container gardening. So if you guys are ever interested, we'll do a full episode of just about container gardening. I think it'd be well worthwhile. We grow a lot of salad in containers. We also had some strawberries in these crates as well. And these tables were made from pallets, actually. Here's our favorite picture of the three colors of the vegetables. What a contrast. Some potatoes from a no-dig bed that was mulched with wood chips. We also have a video on that. All right. We have some mushroom logs that we set up. So actually, that was 3 years ago. And most of them actually didn't do well because they dried out. But so this is shiitake in the background. We have turkey tail and lion's mane. Unfortunately, the shiitake logs didn't do well, and the lion's mane as well. They're mostly culinary mushrooms anyway, and the turkey tail is a medicinal mushroom to strengthen the immune system. It's actually a native mushroom. You can also find it in the wild or in the forest. But yeah, that one actually did very well. I'll show you that in a minute. Is a wood mallow plant. You can eat the leaves off that. And that's the pizza garden one more time. Okay. So let me see. Okay. Now we'll move on, keep moving to the next topic. Now that was vegetables. Well, I mean, I could talk about it for 5 hours just on vegetables alone, but one day we'll make a more detailed episode just on vegetables growing vegetables in a noddy garden on its own. And we also have tubers as well. That's what we started with. Just, well, a few more than that, but just a handful of tubers we started with about 4 years ago now in the winter. And we had some Jerusalem artichokes at the other house that we lived at too, and we brought those with us. And mostly we started with oca, just a few ocas and a few mashuas. And now we have lots of them, and they're actually also available on our website now. Talking of which, our pre-sale is actually on now. Give me a second. So I'll show you these first anyway. So that's how we start tubers. These are similar to a potato. You can grow them and actually cook them in similar ways to the potato. Most people can relate to that. And they also come from the same regions usually. Most of them, except for the Jerusalem artichoke, they come from the Andes. And this is oca plants that we had in half-liter pots. We plant them out. We also have them in 1-liter pots. So then they're nice and strong plants, which we use then to plant them out. We also plant some in buckets. With some of these plants, you have to be careful not to plant them out before there is the last chance of frost, basically, the end of May in Ireland anyway. So that's the advantage with buckets. You could plant them into buckets and then plant them and then move them indoors, but that's all too much work. You need to just ocas and yacons I would plant into 1-liter pots and just keep them indoors until the end of May, until there's not going to be a frost, and they'll do fine then. This is how we plant our strawberries and cream, is the variety actually, the ocas, in the no-dig bed, and then we would actually close in the wood chips on either side. This is what about probably 1.5 month old oca plant looks like, and this is what they look like when they're mature. Actually, that happens to be in the pizza garden after only 2 months, I think, that picture. 2.5 maximum. Here's some more. You can see that's actually directly in wood chips, and this is more just in compost. And they flower, and the flowers are actually very delicious, as our friends pointed out on the weekend that came to visit to see the gardens. And the oca flowers they should produce seeds eventually. We haven't had any seeds yet from our ocas, but we'll keep checking. Usually we propagate them by picking up the tubers, and then we harvest them throughout the winter, and then we repot them, put them into pots in the greenhouse to start them growing in the springtime. Usually around March or April we start them off. You could start them off earlier if you wanted to, but they're fairly flexible. But this is actually a variety called Paskov, a Polish variety, which we have for 1.5 years now, nearly 2 years. So red one, pink. Some more ocas, lots of ocas. It's actually related to the wood sorrel. We do a full episode on tubers one of these days. Actually, we'll do it next weekend, next Friday. I think we'll do it next Friday to the same time, and we'll just do a full episode on all of these ancient edible tubers. Here's all the different ocas. We grow about 8 different varieties now. Lots of different colors, mostly the same, slightly different traits. That's actually the Paskov. Very excited about that one. You can see it looks a bit like a vegetable from outer space. That's the Mexican red, which is very rare. We got it from our friend Frank from Belgium, just as a tiny sample, and we grew them for 2 years now, and we have a good few of them. And that's the oca mix. Now, I have to admit, we did take that picture from the internet. However, we're going to have a very, very similar mix to this one. We haven't dug up the tubers yet because they're not yet ready. At the end of November is usually when the tuber season starts, when the first frost has hit, and the first proper frost or hard frost. And until then, we're going to give you, for the next month or so, we're going to give you guys we're started our pre-sale, and we're going to give you guys a pre-sale discount code for 15% off. It's actually pre-sale, all lowercase, pre-sale 2020. I'll put it on the screen in a minute. And you guys that are watching this are actually the very first people that are getting to know about it. And you get the first dibs into the online shop, into our tubers. And do be aware that they do sell out every year, and especially nice colors as well. So we're going to do like a rainbow mix, and that's what it's going to look like, along with each individual variety of tuber. We also have other types of tubers, like this one is a yacon. It's actually a bit like a giant daisy, like flower on top. And this is a red one, and that was a white one. I posted a picture of this on a Facebook group, and people started sharing it. And I asked, what vegetable is this? And there was like, I think there was about 5,000 comments or something like crazy. And yeah, most people didn't know what it was. Most people thought it was actually dahlia, which kind of looks similar, but it's certainly not. It's yacon. It's a really nice vegetable to eat. You can eat it raw. I would highly recommend doing so. It's really nice to eat in the winter time, kind of like eating an apple, but a little bit more subtle in flavor. And you can see here the growing tips are up here, which is what we cut up and then send out to you guys, or start as new plants for ourselves for the next year. Stores really well, this one. That's the size of tubers you can expect if you grow them in pure compost. And there's the flowers. It's a really nice flower. Bit small though, but it's still nice. And it's usually multi-headed as well. As you can see here, I took that picture today actually. And here's what they look like in the middle of the summer. Probably towards the end of the summer when they're fully grown. And that's what they look like in our garden, as you saw earlier. This is actually the white variety, and this is the red one. Here is Mashua. That's another one. It's a tuberous nasturtium. It's a climber, and you can eat the leaves and the tubers and the flowers. They're all very delicious. And that's Amarillo. It's another variety. And Bloody Tears. Not sure who named that one. That's what the flowers look like. They're very similar to a nasturtium, but more like a trumpet. And they come on very late in the year. Usually November is when we get them. And you can get a harvest like that, probably about 10 kilos off one. Well, sorry, maybe about 5 to 8 kilos off one plant. And you can get tubers as big as that. And that's Ullucus. We're growing some of those too. And don't worry if you guys have any questions. I can't see your questions at the moment, but I will get back to after each folder, and we'll try to keep moving along. Ullucus is kind of similar to a potato, a little bit mucinogenic, so you have to cook it in the right way. But I'm not sure if you can eat the leaves actually. I must check on that. That's what they look like here in the front. This is the plant actually growing, and the leaves are a bit like rubber when you touch them, especially when they're dry. And that's the other variety. Very hard to get them, very expensive, and very, very hard to get in Europe. And this is Jerusalem artichokes. That's a more common one anyway. It's actually a tuberous sunflower, and it comes from America, from North America, the west and the east. Actually, that's where it was native to. And there's different varieties. This is actually white truffle, and this is red fusio. And it is a really hardy vegetable. You can just plant it directly in the ground. You don't have to start it off in a pot beforehand. It's kind of frost hardy. You can just plant it directly in a permanent location. I cannot stress that enough, because it will actually take over a little corner of your garden, and it's not going to go rampant, because if you keep harvesting it year after year, you can get lots of tubers from it, and you can eat those. You need to cure them for about 10 days, I think, in the sun. They do need sunlight to cure, in a greenhouse ideally, or somewhere like that, or in a conservatory maybe. And you can cure them in order to diffuse the inulin in them, so that they don't turn into what's known as fartichoke. So they can give you awful gas if you don't do it, which is what we've done before, which kind of put us off them, but they're supposed to be really delicious. And we're gonna eat them more often now too, again, after many recommendations from friends. Oh, sorry, this is actually a Chinese variety. It's a giant one. We also got a harvest like that off one little corner. And there's 10 kilos of red fusio. This is Aurora Rubin. Looks like a witch's finger, I thought. Here's a few different bits and pieces. That's some Jerusalem artichokes, 3 different varieties, and some mashuas. That's what the flowers actually look like, small sunflowers. So they come on very late in the year, usually about now or in late August. And you can see here, that's what they look like here on the left. This is it here. That's them. They grow very tall. Usually they fall over with the wind. So it's best to actually contain them a little bit. Just put up a little trellis, a few posts and some wire, just to kind of stop them from falling over if it gets very windy. Here is my favorite picture of them all, where you can really see the contrast between all the different tubers. And that's the ochres here on this side. We have more different colors now too. And the mashuas on the right. And on the very right is the Jerusalem artichokes. Yeah, so if any of you guys are interested in buying some tubers to plant next year, I would suggest getting them early, and you get a 15% discount if you use the pre-sale 2020 discount code. I was actually at the Christmas market last year in Castlereagh. Not sure if that's going to happen this year now with the COVID. And that's what it looks like when you roast your vegetables from your garden. So there is oca in there. You can see the golden bits, and they're so good. There's some apios. That's the sausage link tuber, as I call it, because it looks a bit like that. And you can store it like this in a potting soil. And it's very, it stores really well, and it's very hardy. And it has really beautiful flowers as well. And it's ground nut, it's also known as. And we'll have more of those hopefully this year. And there's some tubers from the potting experiment. That's what the ochres look like before they go in the oven. And that's our ID chart. Yeah, that's them all. Oh, let me see. Do you guys have any questions at the moment? Thanks, John. Where are you guys based? Are you guys in Ireland, or what part of the world are you guys in? Just wondering, just to make a comparison. Let me have a look here. I'm just going to give you guys a banner here. There you go. Now, well, do we have a question here? So, well, am I pronouncing that correctly? So one thing I've noticed is the soil below the wood chips is a bit compacted, so my root vegetables didn't do so well. Is there anything you can do to moving forward without compost below the wood chips to help break up the soil? Well, I think worms is the only thing that's going to help you actually basically decompact the soil. Usually nature would actually bring in all the different weeds or wild flowers or wild plants that have tap roots that would break up the soil. For example, dandelions, great mullein, thistles, and all those kind of plants. Of course, they're not going to establish in compacted soil, especially actually silverweed is another one that actually grows in compacted soil as well. And mostly weeds actually repair the soil, but they cannot do it if the ground is covered in wood chips. What can you do? I mean, if you've already covered the ground with wood chips, there's only one thing I would do, and that is brush away the wood chips wherever you're going to plant things, and then simply just put in a few generous handful of compost. You could also brush away the wood chips using a rake with like a drill, like a kind of like a long shape, in order to make space for compost, and then just plant your root vegetables into them. We have not had good success with growing any kind of root vegetables like carrots, for example, except for all the tubers. Actually, these are the ochres, the mashuas, and the Jerusalem artichokes. they do really well in wood chip mulched grounds, but not the ones that are taprooted like the carrots or parsnips, because actually a carrot grows really, really deep, and once it hits a stone, it splits, and we've had carrots that actually turn round at the end. We basically don't grow carrots where we mulch with wood chips permanently, in especially not in a forest garden. I wouldn't bother doing that. I'd have a separate growing area for root vegetables that are taprooted. It's basically like market garden style, where you would put down about whatever amount of compost you have, or if you were digging before, you could stop digging and just keep mulching it with compost every year a little bit. Maybe start off with 5 centimeters worth and then keep adding on about an inch or so, or 2.5 centimeters worth of compost every year. And you can then have wood chips just on the paths, which is what we did in our wall garden. And it works so much better for any kind of root vegetables like that. Oh, hello, Suzanne. You're in County Meath, not so far away, so. And Alexon is in Ireland. Yeah, we're in Roscommon here, near the Midlands, actually, near Athlone, we're based. So just in case any of you guys are wondering about that, we can, give me a second now. What we'll do is, I know we're already 45 minutes. Time flies. What we'll do is we'll just, we need to break up these topics more. I need to keep it general. We will be making more live podcasts on each individual topic and in a little bit more detail. So give me a second. So that was the tubers. We'll just show you real quick now the berries and fruits. So we also grow a lot of strawberries and raspberries and currants and gooseberries, and we're rapidly increasing our numbers on the berry plants. So we're propagating them very quickly, and because we want to grow more berries, we just want to have enough so that we can outgrow the birds and not have to worry about the birds eating all of our berries. We'll just have to grow more berries than there is birds, and then we'll have plenty again. This picture here now, we made jam actually from all those berries. We had about, I think it was 150 strawberry plants, I believe. We got like, it was about 100 strawberry plants, and there was about a half a kilo of strawberries for each plant. So a lot of jam we made that year. Anyone that came to visit actually got a glass of jam as a present. And as you can see, if you plant things in the guild with other beneficial plants on the left, you can see the raspberries are much bigger than the ones on the right. These are elderberries that are just behind our barn here. And that tree was already here before we came here, and it is growing on the north side of the barn, and it's very efficient at growing elderberries. We also have a recipe on how to make elderberry cordial. So now is the time of the year, actually, here in the northern hemisphere anyway, to collect the elderberries and to make some syrup or cordial for the winter time. I'd highly recommend having it because actually it tastes really good, and also you can take a sip of it every day if you feel like you have a cold coming on, or if you want to protect yourself from viruses such as the coronavirus. This is how we propagated strawberry plants in the past. Now we do it directly in the garden in wood chips. It's much easier. Here's some mixed berries we're going to make a cake from at the time. And there's the cake. So there's some thornless blackberries. Unfortunately, this is not in our garden, but we have been growing them in a slightly more shaded spot. I'll show you now in a minute. And we're going to set up some trellises in full sun soon. Here's some strawberries. We have a video on strawberries, actually. We also have strawberry plants available now on the website, bare root though, and they'll be available to ship in late November. We also have a video on which strawberry variety was the best in our opinion and in our context when we were growing here in the Midlands of Ireland. These are black currants, which is actually a blackcurrant bush that grows really big black currants, bigger than our josta berries, which is very unusual because josta berries are actually a cross between blackcurrant and gooseberry. So they should be bigger normally, but our black currants are doing so well that they're actually bigger than themselves, and they're very good. Gooseberries we have. They're very good, and we're going to propagate those as well. We have been propagating them. We have also got raspberries, tons of raspberries. We have like hundreds and hundreds of canes now. And we have rose hips as well. These are wild roses, or dog roses, I believe they're called. And the rose hips are really nice to eat too. Good source of vitamin C. And here's more elders. Actually, that's off a tree that I planted 3 years ago from a little, just a small little bare root plant. And it's really bearing heavy. So we're going to actually propagate that one because it's a good one. Some raspberries that are almost getting ready here. So we have our second raspberry harvest season now. And there's a salmonberry, which has a lovely pink flower. You might see it in a minute. There's some apples. That's not this year. We had no apples on that tree this year. And also, you can see the rhubarb below. More strawberries that are grown directly in wood chips. And there's the flower of the salmonberry. Okay. Now, let me see. You guys, any questions real quick? Oh, hello, Brian. How are you doing? Saving them for seed. Oh, you mean like the tubers? Well, I'm not sure if you can get seeds from Jerusalem artichokes or mashuas in this climate. Maybe it's in a very good hot summer. I think you'll need to plant them in full sun as well. I have never had seeds off those yet, not even off oca, but oca is common enough now, at least in continental climates, where you can get seeds from them. We have had flowers, but no seeds on all three of those type of tubers. Very good. You got some blackberries. So let me see now. We're nearly done now. We're keeping you guys for a long time now. As I said, it's a very broad topic, and it does take time to cover. Let me see here. We also grew some mushrooms. Here is the turkey tail logs that were a big success. But the rest of them, as I said to you guys, the shiitake logs didn't work. They dried out, and the lion's mane logs as well. We're going to try again using the sepulcher method, where we bury the bottom third of the log in the ground. Here's some of the wine cap mushrooms, or King Stropharia, which we planted in the wood chips about a year and 3 months ago. I think it was late May late May last year. And just there in the last week or two, we found some mushrooms growing, and we were delighted. And we tasted them with little hesitation, but they taste really, really good. I can only recommend people growing those if you're setting up a garden, and especially if you have a fresh load of wood chips coming in. You got to inoculate them straight away so that no other mushroom spores can take over. And that's what the mushrooms look like. And that's the king oyster, which we've had at a mushroom forage walk with Ireland's mushroom expert. We were actually, he brought them from Wicklow, and they were really good. Oh yeah, we have also got some links. We have on the website, we have the second now. We have the mushroom logs here in detail. Look how we drilled the holes, and we have these plugs here. And yeah, that's all there is to it. Soak the logs beforehand. If you guys have any questions, or if you need more detail on those, you can always ask us anyway. Also, we grew some edible flowers, like the oca, for example, and the mashua, and the nasturtiums. Actually, we used the nasturtiums to smother the nettles. Kind of worked. Also, we have the mallows. This is zebra mallow, and the leaves are edible too. And feverfew. We've lots of medicinal plants like marshmallow and feverfew, mostly for making tea, actually. But there's the oriental poppy, which is also known as bread poppy. You can use the seeds, of course, to sprinkle over some bread or buns that you're making. And there's another oca flower. That's actually pascuff, and it has very different, much bigger flowers, and they come on much earlier. So maybe, Brian, we might have a chance of actually getting some seeds from that particular variety. We'll see now. I will check. because that actually started flowering a month earlier before the rest of the varieties. So about a month ago, actually. And we'll just check to see if we have any seeds there now in the next few days when we're back out at the garden. And of course, the wood mallow is so beautiful, and edible flowers as well, and leaves. Perennials is what it's all about. Of course, the owl marigold is also nice to grow. It's not perennial though. Winter in our gardens because the ground is not well insulated. And the edible geranium, which is meant to be an annual, it said it on the packet for the seeds. Bianca grew this one, my wife, and we grew it 3 years ago, and it's still there. So it's actually an annual that's grown for 3 years now, 3 full seasons. Let's see how long it can go for. And it's getting bigger and bigger every year, same as our sages and all the other kind of herbs. Now, few herbs. I did not get into herbs too much now. I could do a full episode just on culinary herbs and another episode on just medicinal herbs, of course. There's sage in the foreground here, just freshly planted actually at the time, and some chives and garlic chives. Here's rosemary plants that we just repotted actually last year. These ones were only in 1 liter pots, and this year they're going into 3 liter pots, so they've done very well. And here is some oregano in the foreground here, where my mouse in the bottom left, and some sage beside it. Here's the big fennel plant. That's what it looks like actually in early summer, or actually in springtime. We get lots of fennel leaves nearly for the whole year round, except for the winter for 3 months. But then we can always store some, even the seeds as well. They'll have the same effect on the stomach. They'll help to soothe your stomach while if you have a digestive issue. And there's some wormwood in the background and some oregano on the right, and some strawberries in the foreground. On the left-hand side, there are some raspberries and some rhubarb, and on the right, there's some black currants. That's it. All right. Jesus, we went only a half an hour over time. Sorry to keep you guys for that long. If you have any other questions, you can always ask in the comments below. And if you want to buy some tubers from us, or we also have some strawberry plants as well on our web shop. We also have some willow cuttings as well. All of these are actually on pre-sale now, and they'll be shipped out to you in about a couple of months' time. So yeah, we would really appreciate your support, and we'll always be reinvesting the money to get more diversity and to get to offer more plants as well. For example, we've been investing in fig cuttings to try to grow lots of fig trees, and yeah, lots of seeds for perennial flowers, both ornamental and medicinal, and some just to attract beneficial insects to the garden. Also perennial vegetables, such as all of these tubers that I've been showing you. And yeah, so basically that's all there is to it now. Thank you very much for watching. And yeah, we really appreciate your attention and your time. Thanks very much. Bye-bye.